Hey, so we're back. It seems like we may be having some technical difficulties, so we apologize for that. We have Tracy and Wendy here with us, and today is January 11th, 2019, and joining us is our special guest, Susan Moore, who's joining us to share about how she juggles foster parenting while her husband is an active duty Army chaplain. And so, Susan, would you reshare with us some about your family, please?
All right, so my husband is an active duty Army chaplain. We've been married for 17 and a half years now. And we have two children, Titus and Eden. They're both military brats. Titus was born at Fort Bragg, and Eden was born at Fort Campbell, both during deployments. So, you know. But they've been raised in the military culture, and Brandon and I have been together. We dated for a long time, so we've been together a long time. And as a family, you know, we've talked about if fostering or adopting might be something that was eventually in our future. And when we got here to Hawaii, there was a slide at a steering committee meeting about a meeting for people who are interested in fostering or adopting. And we're like, oh, well, I guess it's time. And I had missed the information, so I had to contact my commanders with, hey, can you send me that slide? And so we went to this meeting. We had a hard time getting there. Brandon was late, went to the wrong building. I was late, had to pick him up. We finally found it, and so that's where it all started. It was there. They did a presentation, and it was, all right, if you're interested in taking the next step, fill out this little slip. And then we filled out the little slip, and that's where we jumped off.
Wow, awesome. It's neat how God orchestrates things like
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, welcome to the table. Thank you for coming to share with us today. So if you have questions about foster care, especially if you're a military family, you're thinking about providing a foster care, jump on, ask questions now. We'll go ahead and begin posting them, and we'll work them into the show as best we can. And also give us a shout out. Let us know where you're watching from. We would love to hear from you. And even if you're not considering foster parenting, perhaps this will help you to relate to someone that you know that foster parents, or maybe, find a way to a charity or something to help foster children or foster families. So keep listening. I'm sure there will be plenty that you'll glean from this, and please go ahead, comment, ask questions. We would love to hear from you.
So, ladies, before we jump into our discussion, our topic for today, we've just brought in the new year, 2019, kind of hard to believe. What did you all do for the new year? How'd you celebrate?
Mine was kind of quiet. My son came in from college, so we just did stuff around the island, because this is his last time coming to the island, so unless he comes sometime, so we just did a lot of things around the island, and we just had fun.
What did you do New Year's Eve? Did you guys stay up till midnight, or?
Oh, we were down in Waikiki and watched the fireworks.
Oh, you were brave.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yes.
Was it busy down there?
I was going to say.
Well, we weren't all the way down there. We were at, I forget what it's called. And it was a little further away from Waikiki, but we could still see them. Mm. So we didn't want to venture into Waikiki.
It definitely sounded like for hours and hours, the whole island of Oahu was nothing but fireworks.
Yes.
Anywhere you were at. So what did you two do?
Go ahead.
My son, for the first time, wanted to stay up until midnight, and his friends were having a party outside, all the neighborhood kids, and they were making s'mores and running around playing and jumping on the trampolines until midnight. And so I had to stay up till midnight too, because I had promised him he could stay up until 12:30. And so I stayed up, and then as soon as I got him inside, I crashed in bed. And that was my husband went to bed hours before, right? So that was it.
Yeah.
Now, Wendy had some excitement.
Gosh, holy cow. So we've been talking about it on the show for leading up to it. My son was invited to participate in an all-state band, and the all-state band from Hawaii participated in the Rose Parade. So what ideally should have happened New Year's Eve was we fed all the kids big pasta dinner, and they were in bed by 8, and but that is not. The group that we traveled with was about 700 people. 500 plus was the band. So when you have 500 teenagers wrangling all of that, as well as the schedule was very aggressive. And so these kids, once we left Christmas Day, and those kids did not stop. We flew overnight. We flew the red eye. And so we got there the day after Christmas, the 26th, and we got off the airplane at 5, and by 9 o'clock he was out in the parking lot marching.
Wow.
So they were practicing that fast after we got off the plane. There was no rest for those kids, and they practiced and they did performances all the way up to the Rose Parade. So by the time we got to New Year's Eve, most of the kids were very sick and tired at that point. And so we were, at that point, they had a 9 o'clock p.m. meeting with all the kids to make sure they had everything together. And then we really encouraged everybody to go to bed because the kids had to get up at 2 a.m. So we could get them ready and on a bus. It was an hour drive to Pasadena, as well as this is a world-renowned thing. People come from all over. There were tours that come to this parade. So we had to get there early so the kids could get there early. So
not to mention it's on national television.
Right, yeah, it was national television, and now we went worldwide because there were worldwide bands. There was a band from Japan and Sweden and a lot of different bands. So what we did New Year's Eve was trying to get our kid put together, make sure he was had his uniform in place. So when he got up at 2 a.m. to get on the bus, they had to be completely dressed with uniform in hand or with instrument in hand. And then we just tried to go to bed. You know, we didn't, I don't even know that we even recognized New Year's Eve at that point. We were just so focused on the parade and so worried because at that point the wind was about 35 miles an hour and those kids marching in that, and it was cold. It was 30-some degrees.
Right off the news anchors on the channel. I was watching because I got up to watch.
Oh, yay.
But they were in coats and everything.
Yeah, it
and
was cool.
So then the gentleman that was on there, I can't remember their name suddenly, but the gentleman that was on there, he was able to take off his regular coat. But, you know, she, of course, was dressed in, like I do, I'll dress warmly, but I don't dress in a lot of layers. And so she couldn't take her jacket
Yeah,
off.
and the
sun,
once the sun came up, it was nice. And thank God. And we really did pray about this. When we got to Pasadena, there was no wind. So that made it a lot easier for them as well.
We went from pretty chilly to like 80 degrees. Like in no time flat, it seemed like.
In the 60s for sure. It was
They were talking
pretty
about
nice.
how hot it got.
Yeah.
So that's exciting.
It was very exciting. A whirlwind trip. We're still kind of all recovering from it, but really, really fun.
I was surprised watching your Facebook.
Oh gosh.
At how packed it was. Because you had kind of shared that jam-packed, but it was not. I had no clue how jam-packed that was.
I had it was crazy. People camp out there for 2 days on the sidewalks to get that sidewalk seat. And when I say camp out, they had beds, they had fires, they had grills, they had heaters, they had heat lamps, they had tarps. I mean, these people, I do not mean to make light about this, but the homeless people were sort of pushed out of their spaces. So they became actually really homeless people at that point because there were so many people that came to live on the street for this parade. For miles.
Wow.
I think 1 million people attend that parade. And it was incredible to just see. We were in bleachers that were 20 rows up and, oh gosh, just hundreds of feet long. And those were packed. And those weren't even the people that were camping out on the streets. It was cold. It was cold. And these people had their air mattresses and their dogs and their coolers and it was
take it seriously.
Crazy. Oh, they seriously did. It was insane.
It's like tailgating to the
It was. It was. I don't know that I would be that committed to it.
I know I wouldn't.
But those are the free seats. The street seats are the free seats, and so people want them. They're coveted in that respect. So the whole parade route, 7 miles, people lined those streets 2 days before.
I'm grateful for TV. Right
Yeah.
I thought it was bad. I got up early. Drinking coffee. I know who's in it.
Yeah, there's a kid I know. Yeah.
So but that sounds like we just had kind of a peaceful evening at home, playing board games and then fighting off illnesses and that fun stuff because it just never seems like the holidays can get past us without illness. It's just somebody gets sick. So I'm sure others can relate to that. How did you spend New Year's or spend your holidays? We would love for you to share with us in the comment section. We have a couple of hellos. Hello from Fort Polk, Louisiana, from Elena Kopp and Charlie's. I'm so sorry. And Jessa say aloha. So aloha. We're so glad you tuned in today. If you're watching, please just give us a shout out. Tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to say hi to you. And also Susan is going to share with us about foster parenting. So if you have any questions, go ahead and ask those now, or if you have something while she's talking, and we will still, please be sure to post. We'd love to interact with you. So anyway, let us move on. As I told you, did I say Sharon? Or sharing. Sorry.
It was a mix.
I have
It's all good.
Holiday brain, fuzzy brain going on where I'm trying to get everybody back in school and everybody going, and my husband back to full days, and so from half days. So anyway, so Susan, kind of what you kind of shared what led you into foster parenting. What process is there? Is there, like, was it a lengthy process to go through to become foster parents? How did that happen?
It took us 6 months from the time we went to that first info meeting to the time we actually got our license. And the reason it took so long is trying to get paperwork from the military. We can all understand that. So we went to, so the meeting was in late August, and in September we started our training classes. And Hawaii actually has relatively easy requirements for training. It's 18 hours, I believe, of training, and 9 of it is in class and 9 of it is online. So we went to 3 3-hour classes, and that was the only in-person training we had to do. And so we did 2 of those in September, and then the third one we had to do at the October session because my son's birthday fell on the other one, and we're like, you know. So we went to one in October, and so we were done with that. And then I already had our home study scheduled for the person to come in and start. It's about 15 hours of interviews. The interview me for a while, interview my husband alone, and then interview us as a couple, and then talk to each of the kids. And then I was worried about our home not passing muster because it's a 100-year-old historic home, and you know it's got its issues. But compared to a lot of housing in Hawaii, it's pretty nice. So they were like, wow, your house is amazing. And actually on the check sheet for your home in Hawaii, they have things like, do you have running water? Do you have flushing toilets? Do you have a way to keep food cold? Do you have flooring that's not dirt flooring? And so I was like, oh, okay, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah.
They said that those are more for some of the outer islands, more than Oahu. So we did our home study, we did all those interviews, we signed a lot of paperwork, filled out a lot of paperwork.
So a question for you, I'm just going to jump in here.
Go for it.
If you're allowed to tell, I don't know if it's secret or whatever, but what kind of questions did they ask you in your interviews?
Oh, so I gave my entire biography to this woman, like, okay, so I was born in Oregon.
Oh, wow.
And literally, like, my childhood in Oregon, and then we moved to Colorado, my childhood there, growing up, my college years, you know, the whole thing. And then they do, I believe it's called a genogram, where they like graph out your family relationships. And there was 2 different ones. I had to do my whole family tree, and this is where I discovered that I don't know one of my cousin's last names. And because she's married multiple times, and I don't actually still don't remember what her last name is. And there was another one, like one of my cousin's spouses or something. I was like, oh, I can't think of that one's name. But I also was not raised close to my cousins, so I've never been real close to them. But anyway, so they map out your whole family tree, trying to find like where your strong connections and stuff like that. So that was a long time to map that out. And then they do the other thing, which I think might actually be the genogram, where they map out like your social life, your religious life, your work life, and your family life. And they make this, you know, kind of web of it. And the poor lady was so confused because my husband is an Army chaplain. Our work and our social life and our religious life are extremely intermingled.
Yeah,
so he talks about, okay, you know, on Wednesdays we go to family night at chapel. And she's like, well, is that work? Yes.
Yes.
Well, is that like a religious thing? Yes. And is that a social thing? Yes. And it's a family thing. We all go together. And she's like, well, I don't know where to put it. Can't help you.
There should be another category for all the things.
It needed to be like a Venn diagram more than separate circles for us, at least. So that really like kind of blew her mind. I think she hadn't experienced maybe some of what military life is like for us, because we live on post, and you know, the people we live near, my husband also works with, and so
friends.
And we're friends. We hang out. So we did that, and then There was lots of like, if we mentioned something that maybe was a medical thing, or, oh, and I have to give like my medical history and like any medications I take, and then they want documentation for that stuff. So
wow.
then they have to contact a doctor I saw 8 years ago who knows if he's even in practice anymore. And then trying to get records from the military healthcare system. And so she's calling me weeks later. Well, Tripler still hasn't sent me this. I'm like, all right. And she said, I've asked for it twice. I said, all right, well, I'll go fill out the paperwork and see if they'll send it if I say it. But so that's what took the longest. And also we had to go and do fingerprinting and background checks. And then they background checked, I believe it was for the last 5 years, the states we've lived in. So then, of course, I had to remember my addresses.
Oh, gosh.
For the last 5 years, which I think was like 4 at that point or something. So then for them getting the state background checks for them. So all in all, it took about 6 months. And then finally, and I should back up a little bit and explain that with the licensing, the state has contracted it out to a group called Partners in Development Foundation. And so they are the ones, and specifically the subgroup Hui Ho'omalu is who does the licensing stuff. So they did our training.
I was going to ask you, is it privatized?
It's contracted out.
Okay.
And you can also go through Catholic Charities, but kind of the state one that they do is Partners in Development Foundation with Hui Ho'omalu. So they're the ones who did all of this. And so they put your whole packet together, everything they've gleaned about you in your life. And oh my goodness, I have no idea how big this thing was. But then they basically hand it over to the state licensing person who, takes a quick look through it. And then I had a quick interview. I believe she was at my house for about 30 minutes maybe. But a lady from the state licensing came out, met her. She's very nice. Just kind of confirmed like, okay, you're wanting to do 0 to 3. Okay, you said you're okay with this, but not okay with this. And yes, that's it. And okay, can I look at the house and give her a little tour? And that was that. And so then our license came in the mail and a little certificate.
How long did that take?
For it to come in the mail, I think maybe 2 weeks.
Oh, that's
a week or
not
2
bad
weeks
here.
after
Okay.
she came. But once she came, that was like our date that we were licensed.
Approved. Okay.
And then I just got the paper copy later.
I know each state, I'm going to jump in real fast because I actually have experience with this. I've been a foster parent in the state of Kansas, and then also a foster care worker. So I have a little bit of experience with it, but most of every state is different. So check the laws and the regulations in your state. And I know that sounds like that is a lot. And you did, it felt like a lot too. I'm sure I know it did for,
It felt like it took a long time.
Yeah. But thankfully they're more cautious. When you're placing a child in someone's care, you want to make sure they receive the best care possible. And so it's kind of being responsible by the state and making sure that they're placing them and you were talking about homes. I have, as a worker, I would go in and do walkthroughs and background checks with families, the biological families or close relationship. I can't remember what they call them now because I've been out of this for several years. But so I would go in and approve or disapprove the homes, and you would be surprised at what you see. It shocked me that people, but I feel bad because a lot of them mean well. I mean, so you can't go in with because I was the same way. I thought, oh, I never pass and everything, because I'm not a great housekeeper.
Yep, that's me too.
And so, it's tidy and we have clean water and all that, but housekeeping's not my forte. And so I was worried about the same thing. But then when you go in and see other people's homes, it does make you really grateful though. But then it gives me such a deep respect for those who are willing, that don't have a lot, that are willing to take in children. And so that and in turn it blessed me. So, and I want to say hi to Bree who joined us. So hi Bree, she says hello.
Hi, Bree.
So anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Oh, no, that's fine. And I know that Hawaii is actually easier to get licensed in than many estate. From other friends I've talked to who've tried to foster or adopt. My good friend Marcy tried to adopt, and when they did their home study, I called her before mine. I'm like, what do I need to know? And she's like, all right, we'll have a thermometer on hand to show what temperature your fridge is and be able to show what temperature, like the water comes out of your faucet. Hawaii, no, you have water coming out of a faucet. Yay.
Yeah.
So it was much more lax. I think that when we foster again in another state, we're probably going to be a little surprised at how much more difficult or more stringent it is. But they do some transferring. Our licensing agents.
Does that transfer?
Not exactly, but they will send our packet to, like, all I have to do is contact our licensing agent here. She said, keep my card. And she said, if we, are doing it again, they'll just send our packet over. And so hopefully we won't have to do quite as much with it stuff, but each state has their own requirements. So, I had a friend who moved here from North Carolina and wanted to immediately start fostering because they've been fostering, they've adopted, and that was very important to them. And so she contacted the state before they even got here saying, hey, we're moving, I want to do this. And she got her North Carolina stuff, and she was able to get licensed just I think like 2 or 3 months maybe once they got into their house. That's so that they could have the home looked at. So that was exciting for her. And I just have to share a really special story about that. As we were getting licensing, you're very excited for your first child. So I was calling one of the placement ladies because we had said we were willing to take a child pre-licensing if they had a need, because sometimes they fall short. And we'd said, absolutely, we'll do that. And we'd gotten a couple calls, but none of them, and we'd said yes, but none of them came through. And then I called her, I was like, hey, I'm finishing our licensing stuff up, in a few days, do you have anything? And she's like, and we had said 0 to 3 because I homeschool my kids and I wanted children below school age, so we're not mixing homeschool, public school schedule. So she's looking at her list. She's like, well, how do you feel about 3-year-old twins? And we were licensed for 1. But
they can make an exception.
They can make exceptions, and they do. And so I was like, oh, well, let me talk to my husband about it. And he was in meetings, so I couldn't get a hold of him. So meanwhile, it's just working on my heart. And I'm like, we could do twins. We could do that. I mean, granted, all the stuff we have is for like little ones. And I asked my son, I'm like, how would you feel about sharing your bedroom with 2 3-year-old boys? My son has a great heart. And he's like, I would be okay with that, Mom. I'm okay.
Sweet.
So by the time I talked to my husband, I'm like, all right, I'm ready to do this. And he's like, Susan, we should probably stay kind of in our original plan for the first time. And thankfully, he's sometimes my voice of reason when and I'm like, all right. Well, meanwhile, I had asked this friend of mine from North Carolina to pray about this while I'm, trying to get a hold of my husband. I'm like, hey, pray about this for me. And she's like, oh, twins, that's great. They'd be my ideal placement. I'm like, really? Why? She's like, because you just do the same thing twice. It's so easy. I'm like, oh, well, if we can't take them, would you be interested?
It's not so easy.
She's like, yes, if you can't take them, I would totally do it. So I talked to my husband, and so I called the licensing or the placement lady back, and I'm like, well, I don't think we're going to be able to, but I have a friend who would love to take them. She's like, really? I was like, yeah. She's almost done licensing, and so I gave her their name, and so she has those twins still. It's been a little over a year now, and she still has those twins.
Is she enjoying having twins?
Yes, she loves them. They're part of her family now, and so that's just a really special. Absolutely, that was definitely God's plan too. That we would say no, because sometimes it's God's plan for you to say no to a placement option so that there's a better option. And her family is so much better suited to twins than mine is. So
I love that, that rather than making a rash decision, that you consulted your son, and he's how old again?
He's 11 now, but he would have been 10 at the time.
And that is, for me, that's so important. Your husband, of course,
yes,
but also your children, because children can get displaced when a foster child comes in. So if they're the baby of the family, and the foster child's younger, then all of a sudden, like with my daughter, Savannah was the youngest. She was my baby girl. And then, then we got Erica. And although she was a private adoption, but then Savannah was all of a sudden displaced by this baby, and here she was 11.
Yeah.
and that was hard for her, but she's really close, and then Erica was later displaced by Seth, but he was only 30 days younger, and so it was like having twins. But so yeah, I love that you consulted him. And did you do anything special to prepare your kids for fostering?
We included them a lot in the discussion. I mean, we talked about it at dinner. We talked about it in the car. We talked about what it would be like. We talked about placement option, like when they would call and say, hey, would you be able to take a baby in a cast? And, they got to be part of the conversation. And our kids, they're very resilient military kids, and they kind of take their cues from us. And when we're excited about it and positive about it, they take their cue from that. And so they are thrilled to be fostering, and they love our babies that we've had.
They do. I had the opportunity to be around them with the babies, and they just love on them like little parents, but they don't have to. What's really neat is you don't ask them to do that. They do that on their own. They really love those kids.
They do. And we make a point every night to pray for our baby and for baby's family or mom, and for the time when they're going to go back, so that it's in the forefront of my kids' mind that it's not permanent. We don't get to keep them, which is hard. And it was hard. We've had our second baby now for almost a year now. And so this is only our second placement. So when baby number 1 went home, it was hard on the whole family. And, we were all very sad. And my husband and I were open with our kids about the fact that we're sad too. It's okay to be sad, but we're happy that he got to go back to mom, and we still pray for that baby. And that was a really good situation. And mom and I have a really good relationship. And so we got to see him right after his first birthday a couple months ago. She's like, yeah, you guys are welcome to come see him. And so we met up at the mall and brought him some birthday presents, and the kids were so excited to see him. And, he probably didn't remember us because he was 4 months when he left us. But it was really great for my kids to get to see, such a success story, and to see us so pleased that, he was back with his mom and she was doing so good. So.
And you really helped pave the way for that positive, a positive reintegration for both the baby that you had, but also for your own kids. That is really a true act of loving, is to be able to do what's best for that child. And so I love that you did that.
Quick question. So you've mentioned it a couple of times that you had options, and I'm not as familiar with this process as you both are, but I have a friend who was looking into adoption, and she was kind of walking the process, and she was walking it through with me. And she said she filled out a paper. She said it's probably 6 pages long, 5 pages long, what she was willing to accept and what she wasn't. And she said, whatever you could think of was on that list. Could you handle this in your home? Could you handle that? Can you talk a little bit about that and tell us a little bit more about that process and what that looks like?
They covered that in the interview process. When the lady was doing our 15 hours of interviews, she asked a lot of detailed questions about, medical issues, what kind of things. And I said, I can take some minor things, but if it involves a needle or a tube entering the body, I'm out. But a cast, I could do a cast. So she, asked questions medically and about medical fragile babies and such, drug addicted babies, fetal alcohol syndrome, those, and then into the realm of sexuality, and would you be willing to work with a child who's expressing transgender tendencies, or which 0 to 3. Some of the questions didn't apply as much to us, but then also same thing with the parents. Would you be willing to work with parents who are, this or this, and then religious? Would you take a child who's this religion, or who believes this, or whose the parents and the child both get a say in the religious experience of the child, even in foster care. So they can ask that we take them to church, or that they be exempted from going with us, or that we take them to temple or to, wherever. And the child, as they get older, they get to express that wish, and it's to be honored as well. And so a lot of questions about that. Would you keep an idol in your house if they wanted you to? Would you keep, this religious text in their room if they wanted you to? So a lot of questions like that. I'm trying to think. I didn't pay as much attention to the questions that pertain to teens, because we weren't planning on doing teens, but there were some specific
fire starters, runaways.
Right.
There's segments.
That was a lot of the questions. There's some very detailed questions about that they had to find out.
So you really got to be honest with yourself. And there's nothing wrong with saying no to something. It's far better you say it now than after the child's in your home, and then they have to move the child to another placement.
Yeah, and every movement creates trauma for the child.
Right.
And so we want to minimize that as much as possible. So yeah, we were honest with the woman who was interviewing us and saying there are some of those things that we said no to. No, we would not take a child in this, if this were the case, or we're very accepting of a lot of things. They also ask about race. Would you accept a child of, different races, or are there any that you wouldn't accept? So there's many things that we said, yes, we can take, we don't care about that. And there were a few things that we did care and said, no, that wouldn't be a good fit for us. So yeah, being honest about that up front. And that's another thing, like when the licensing agent came to do that final interview, she kind of reviewed some of those things, like you'd be okay with this, but not this or this. And yeah, so being clear about that.
That's cool. That's neat. So we kind of talked about how your children reacted to having foster children in the home. I'm kind of curious too, after the first one went home, and then you now have another one, how did they react to that one? Have they been more distant with the next one?
Oh, no. So we, it was a fast transition, faster than I thought. So we were told, we thought baby number one was going to stay with us longer. And we were told at a meeting of everybody, they're called an Ohana conference, where everybody who works with the child plus the foster parents, which are technically now called resource caregivers. So we're the RCG, or resource caregiver.
Yeah, I'm not using it.
Foster parenting.
Wow,
Most people when they're
that's so
talking
fancy.
still use it, but I guess it comes with too much stigma now. So resource caregiver. Anyway, so they have a meeting where everyone who's involved in the child's case, any therapists, counselors, anything like that, and then all the family, and like if there's aunts, uncles, grandparents, anyway, everyone comes together to get on the same page about. But at that meeting, they were like, okay, well, we want the baby to go home next week on Friday.
Wow, that fast.
Yeah, and we were stunned and not prepared for that. And so I had to go home and tell the kids, like, sorry guys, but let's start preparing for this, and it's a good thing. And so he went home on a Friday, and then Saturday my husband left for training in Thailand for a few weeks. Sunday my son came home, he came down with a fever. And then Monday morning on President's Day, they called and said, can you take a newborn this afternoon? Sure, I am Army wife, hear me roar. So I'm like, sure, we can. I did warn her. I'm like, I do have a child in the house with a fever right now. Are you okay with that? Yep. They're desperate a lot of times.
Normal, in this normal life. So
So they bring me a newborn, and what was really sad is that they bring me this newborn and they say, I'm not sure what his name is. I think it's this, but I'm not sure. So his paperwork just says baby boy and his last name on it. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to use that name until I hear otherwise. But, it's a transport worker. It was a driver who picks him up from the hospital and brings him to me. And here you go.
Sometimes they don't know much except what might be in. I don't know if they transport them with binders now, but sometimes, because I used to have to put a binder when we had a new child come in, I'd have to put a binder together, and you might have one page. You might even just have the order, the one-page order, placing them into custody, and that's it.
They're supposed to do the binders, but our kids, the babies are so young that there's not a binder yet. So I guess for the one I currently have, I probably started the binder because I keep everything in it. But anyway, so they bring us this newborn, and I have paperwork that says baby boy and his last name, and that's it. And I think he came with diapers from the hospital, a few things of formula, and hospital blanket, a hat and a onesie. And I think that's what I had. But, I had stocked up ahead of time on stuff. I didn't have a ton of newborn stuff, but I put the call out to my tribe. One of my neighbors has a little boy who's about 4 months older than my guy. And so she brought me a whole bunch. I texted her, I'm like, do you have any newborn clothes that you could part with? And she brings me like 2 bags of clothes. I run to the store, get some more formula, get a couple things, and off we went. And Brandon was gone for I think 2 weeks, so I was doing all the night feeding.
Did he know about it in the meantime?
He did. Like as soon as he called me, and we had discussed ahead of time, all right, if they call while you're gone, is it okay if I say yes? Yeah, I'll trust your judgment. Okay. So when he called, I'm like, guess what? We have a newborn. Surprise! And I will tell you, having a newborn, even though I didn't birth him at 39, is a lot harder than it was at 29. Those nighttime feedings were a lot harder. But, kind of got in the groove of it. This is a sweet story. My son, who we've already mentioned, he was going through a medical issue at that point where he was waking up in the middle of the night and being up for the day at like 2 a.m. And so if he was up and the baby needed to be fed, he'd come and say, Mom, I'll feed him for you. And he'd take him out to the living room, feed him his bottle, and bring him back for me to burp because he didn't want him to spit up on him. And
this is like the sweetest boy
so
ever.
he would do the night feedings and then bring the baby back for me to burp and put back to bed.
I have
And
a story to tell about him too. We were at a luncheon, and he just comes up like he's like, very grown up and starts talking to me. Just having a nice little conversation with him. I was so impressed with him. So he's such a sweetheart. So
anyway, so yeah, newborn. I forget what the original question was at this point.
how you transition?
Oh, transitioning. So anyway,
Yeah.
so that's how we transitioned into the newborn, and my husband came home, and it was interesting because he was not around when our biological children were newborns since he was deployed. He came home when Titus was 6 months old, so he missed the whole first part, and then I think he came home when Eden was 8 weeks old. So he still missed those first couple months. So it was really fun for me to get to see him experience life with a newborn. And he wasn't as thrilled about some of the things like waking up multiple times a night. And but so that, it was a transition. And now that we're out of the nighttime feedings, it's a little bit easier. We all get our sleep now.
Got that routine down.
So y'all are PCSing soon.
We are.
So how is that working with your current placement?
So he's going to have to move to a new foster home, which is really hard. And I really was hoping before, I told the people, so the move came up somewhat unexpectedly. My husband got promoted early, which was great and very exciting, but it meant we had to move early. And so I told his caseworker and his guardian ad litem that, okay, so this is happening and we're going to have to move early. And they're both like, oh no, we're hoping you keep him longer. But they did say to me, we would like it if you would help find his next foster home. If there is a neighbor, a friend, somebody he already knows, so that it will make the transition easier. And that was something I wanted so badly. And I was so thankful God had arranged that was on their hearts too. So I've actually found his new foster home, and we're even now, we're still, a couple months out from that, already spending time with them, getting to know them, spending time in their home, so that to minimize as much as possible the trauma that we'll be having. Because
story.
it
melts my heart because it makes me think, and I don't mean to interrupt, it was so, having been a worker before, and I have seen foster families that they fall in love with the kids, and that's a great thing, but then they don't want to let them go, and so they don't let other people, like their biological parents or other people, into their lives. And it really does, it probably sounds cliche, but it takes a village to raise a child.
It really
and
does.
You're really modeling that. And it just, I was telling my husband the other day when I said that you were coming on, because I said she's really modeling like the foster parent that I would have loved to have. And I've met some great foster parents, but because you really understand that when you take these kids in, you take them in knowing that you need to work with the whole case, all the case workers. You might have therapists and guardian ad litems and CASAs and the biological parents and biological family, or whatever the unit is, and you got to work with them and include them in your circle for the best interest of that child. And so you really do it as a family affair. And then, instead of jealously guarding this baby, you're like reaching out and bringing this new family that's going to take him.
I think watching Susan go through this process just a little bit from the distance, she's always had this great attitude about it. The goal is to love that child and get him back to mom. But I think and now I'll probably cry too, just from you saying this, it is one of the best examples I've ever seen of unconditional love. That is the best example I've ever seen, because this family has done it just that way.
They love the parents too.
They do. It is about
the
best for that child. And I know this transition is going to be hard. I know they've had this baby for a long time. And that unconditional love, that I'm going to find somebody that's going to do right by this baby before, I'm not going to just go, well, all right, I'm done. So that's just a brilliant attitude. You really demonstrated that unconditional love. It's kind of amazing to watch.
We do love.
So kind.
Sorry, I have tissues though. Anyone?
Having been on both sides of the coin,
really.
And having been both a foster parent who has gone on to adopt, but had also sent children home. and then a foster care worker. It just is so amazing to me, your story, and how you just, everybody is just part of the circle, the village that's raising this baby.
It has taken a village. My neighbors have been fabulous, both in watching baby boy, because he has to have a babysitter who's 18 or older, which eliminates, like when you live on a military base, once they turn 18, you know, a lot of times they go to college, or so trying to find someone to watch my baby who's old enough. So I have neighbors who've pitched in and watched, neighbors who've brought me meals when, you know, I had a newborn. When he was 2 months old, I fell and broke my ankle and was on crutches for 6 weeks. And we could have
Remember the scooter? Yeah, the scooter thing. Yeah.
We could have chosen to give him back, say, you know, now's not a good time, got to give him back, can't do it anymore. But he was already part of our family. That would be too hard for us to give back. And so my tribe rallied around me, my neighbors, my friends, family even, and helped us make it work. And my kids really stepped up a lot. At that point, we had not let Eden carry him around. She could sit and hold him because, you know, she's 8 now. She would have been 7 at the time. But, you know, just a newborn, they're so fragile and everything. But once I fell and broke my ankle, all right, Eden, this is how you hold him and this is how you walk with him. Because
yeah, right. And they squirm.
Because on crutches, I can't carry a baby. It's just not possible. And so my son pitched in a lot too. Like we had to go to a doctor's appointment, and biological mom was coming, and I was like, all right, Titus, so you're gonna have to come with me because you have to carry the baby and push the stroller because I'm still crutching around. So anyway, but it really, I have been so thankful for all the people who have supported us, whether it's watching him, bringing a meal, praying for us. A lot of people were praying about this new foster home for him. People all over the country and probably the world, because my mom is a great prayer warrior who, you know, put the word out to all of her people, hey, pray for this. And so I shouldn't be surprised at all that God provided such an awesome family for him to go to. But yeah, so it does take a lot of people, and I couldn't do it myself. And we have, as a family, reached out to biological mom. You know, I don't think we really have to. They encouraged us in the training to consider consider the child's, you know, and the whole family. And that's part of my husband's heart, is ministering to the family as well. And so we've reached out to her. I have sent her, I send her pictures and videos all the time. He just started walking, and it's so precious. And so I sent her a video yesterday because she hasn't gotten to see him since he started walking. And she's like, oh. And like on her birthday, I made a little card from baby boy, and we sent a card, and I just made different little things to send her, and we got her a couple Christmas gifts, and we've invited her to spend a couple holidays with us so that she could be with him. It hasn't worked out, but we have reached out to her and included her as much as we can, without, I guess, making it, you got to keep a certain distance.
Right. Boundaries.
There's boundaries, and I have to keep those boundaries in place, but we've reached out to love on her as much as we can, because she comes from a hard place, and I can't imagine going through what she's going through. It's a tough place she's in. And I have been amazed at what God has done in me in having compassion. It's really easy for me to judge. That's what I'm prone to. And I am just amazed at the compassion God has put in my heart. For her, especially, there's so many things that I could judge on. And I do occasionally get frustrated with decisions that I don't think were the best. But God has given me this insight into what she's coming from and how she was raised versus what she knows. And so I'm thankful that God has placed that on my heart to have compassion rather than judgment. And I know
my mom had always said, but for the grace of God, there
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Compassion instead of judgment. What a great line. I think that's tweetable. Anybody want to tweet that? So,
a couple of quick questions before we sign off, because it's about time for us to close. But any closing tips and advice that you'd like to give to someone who's considering foster parenting?
Well, first of all, I got to share my favorite book here. This is Orphan Justice by Johnny Carr. And this is the most fabulous book. It is written from a Christian perspective and a Christian worldview. And I feel like every Christian should read this book, because so much of the Bible is about God's heart for the needy and the orphan and the widow, the fatherless, those who don't have someone to care for them. And foster children fall into that category. because they're in a hard place by no choice of their own and no doing of their own. But this book talks about both orphans, foster care, and where those children are coming from, the situation they're in. And every single chapter at the end has a section on what anyone can do to reach out, what many people could do, and what a few people could do. And each one is harder. And it's just, if you feel like, well, yeah, foster care is great and I support those people, but I don't know what to do, this is a fabulous book to read, and look at those endings about, okay, well, that's a small thing. I can do that. I can make that little change in my life. Or I can reach out and do this little thing. One thing that people who foster parents really, really, really appreciate is those who will provide respite care. Mm-hmm. Respite care being, someone to watch my child while I'm doing something. And it comes on different levels. Like this morning, I have somebody watching baby boy, and that would be considered respite care, I guess. It's like a babysitter. But on a larger scale, we live in Hawaii, and there's awesome things here we want to do, and we want to travel, and so he can't travel with us. So right after he was a few months old, it was right before I broke my ankle, actually, we went on a cruise of the Hawaiian Islands. Well, he can't come with us, and it was a week long, and I had a wonderful, wonderful neighbor who said, hey, I can take care of a 2-month-old, and while you do this, and provided that respite care for us.
How did they go through that? Is there background checks or anything?
So in most states, you have to be licensed to be a respite care family. In Hawaii, you don't. In Hawaii, essentially, they trust my judgment that if I say this person will take good care of them, they trust my judgment. So I just, give the names, phone numbers, address, children, kind of children's ages, and the caseworker trusts my judgment on that. Mm-hmm. And we did that again. We went to Kauai for a few days and left him with a different family who just adored him. And I just make arrangements for when he has visitation, they send a driver to pick him up. So I just let the driver know, all right, he's here, pick him up there and drop him off there. Same thing for court. He has a driver that picks him up. So respite care is a huge, huge thing you could do. So looking at getting licensed in your state, whether it's just to do a 1 or 2 day, sometimes families want to travel for a holiday and they can't take the child with them, like at Christmas or whatnot. So even providing respite care over a holiday is a sacrifice for you, but it's something you can do and make it special for this child. Meals, like I said, having a newborn, even if you didn't birth them, is hard. So someone to bring me meals, especially with Brandon being gone, I can't run to the store. Several of my neighbors were like, hey, going to the commissary, what do you need? Mm-hmm. They'd shop for me. So providing things like that is huge, especially when you have little ones. But someone else's, I've read, anytime you bring a new child into your home, it's a dynamic change. It's a great time to bring a meal, just so that family has time to be together, to spend time.
Right. Especially on the day when your husband's gone to UI and your son
has
sick
a fever.
I've got a newborn for you. Can you take him today?
Yeah. So the first thing I did was text out to my neighbors. All right, ladies, rally around. I've got a newborn coming. And so they were all like, okay, I'm here. I can help whatever you need. And
that's another good point. Don't be afraid to reach out, because I think sometimes we think we can do it on our own, and we don't want to bother anyone. Mm-hmm. I think that's probably more our MO than anything is, well, I don't want to bother anyone, but people want to help.
Yeah.
They want to bless you. And this is a great thing. This is how I can help her. So don't be afraid to reach out when you need help.
And when you offer help, be specific, not like, well, hey, if you need anything, let me know. That's hard for me to follow up on. But if you say, hey, I'd love to bring you a meal, let me know, in the next couple of weeks when's good. Or, hey, I'd love to provide the friend who provided respite care when we went to Kauai is a friend who happened to say one day, hey, I would really like to provide respite care for you. Let me know when you need it. And that was a specific thing that God provided at a specific time. I was like, hey, we were wanting to go to Kauai. Are you okay with several days? We'd love to do that. So being specific in your offers is very helpful, so that we know. If you say, let me know if you need anything, and I ask you to keep them for 4 days, and you were like, that is not what I had in mind, be specific in what you're willing to help with, because that's a benefit. I mean, hey, if you want to come over and help clean my house, or even just hold the baby while I clean the house, those things at the beginning are helpful.
That's awesome. So that went right perfectly into what I was going to ask. How can we help? Is there any other ways? Like you had mentioned too, that you'd reached out for supplies and things like that. If we maybe don't know a foster family, how could we? But we're getting rid of our outgrown children's clothes or toys or things like that? Is there something we can
Yes,
do to
so
specifically help foster?
Here in Wahiwa, at Schofield Barracks, in our little town of Wahiwa, there is a fostering closet that one of the churches houses, and I donate stuff and I go and get stuff there. It's for foster families and children. Foster children who have aged out of the system can go there and get stuff, as well as adoptive families.
Okay, so you can even, by donating things, you can even help.
So you can, as long as there's something a teenager would wear, you can even donate,
awesome.
Adult clothes, but if something a teen would wear. But it has been a huge benefit to me. That's where I got like my baby swing, my first car seat, my stroller, for free. I got all that stuff there for free. People donate cribs and big stuff. So here in Wahiwa, they have that. But if you contact, I'm sure if you contact like your local, like child welfare services, they can probably point you to that. I even donated toys and books to the office because they have visitation rooms that they try and keep stocked with things that the parents and kids can do together. Games, toys they can play with together, books they can read together. And I had a whole bunch of books at homeschool. I have a lot of books. So I was getting rid of some younger stuff. And so I asked our caseworker, hey, could you use this stuff? She's like, yes, that would be great. And so
they get worn, they get broken.
Yep.
So we have to rotate them out.
I'm excited we're having this conversation. My husband and I are going through our garage because we're looking at a PCS as well. And we have a soon-to-be 16-year-old. And we have all his kid stuff, all his toys that he's finally ready to get rid of. And so we would have just donated them up into the thrift shop, but now I will take them there. That'd be awesome.
Yes.
So glad to hear that.
So that's so fine if there's one of those near you and finding that, donating to it, volunteering, because they have volunteers who organize the stuff, sort the stuff. When I go in, they have the baby stuff sorted into size, so I can just go. Like I'm going to go this weekend to the 12-month bin because baby boy had a growth spurt. And so I can go to the 12-month bin and start looking through the 12-month boys even. They have it separated by gender. So if there's something like that in your area, supporting that, donating to that. Also, another way to support families would be looking for keeping your eyes out and being aware of those in your community who could be at risk, especially finding young moms who don't know what they're doing, and be a mentor to them. Reaching out, inviting them over for a meal so they can see what does it look like to sit down and have a family meal. They might never have done that in their life. They don't know that that's of benefit.
That is so true, because that's what as a worker, I encountered a lot. They just, it's not that they weren't even necessarily abusive to their children, they just didn't know how to parent. And so to have a model, someone because especially like us in the Army, where a lot of the young moms don't have moms nearby. So those of us who have kids, if we could just take them under our wing, or sometimes they just get tired. We all get tired, we just need a break. So if we just kind of work together as a village, which I think we in the military do quite well, and just love on each other and try to help ease the burden.
So keeping your eyes out. That's a lot of things that I was thinking about. Another thing, children in foster care and orphans are in danger of being trafficked, human trafficking, sex trafficking, and there's organizations out there where you can go and you can learn how to spot the signs in your community of where sex trafficking or human trafficking might be going on. So something as simple as going to a workshop or a seminar to learn about that. And so then you know what to look for, and you can be on the lookout, and you see something, you say something, you call the authorities and say, hey, this isn't right, something's going on. That's a way to protect orphans and children in foster care, because they're at very high risk for that.
Wow. We need to work together to protect our children.
Absolutely.
It really does. It takes a village, and it takes all of us working together to protect kids, because even if it's not a child in foster care, all of our child we don't know who our kids encounter. So we want to know that our kids are safe, but sometimes we can't always have our eyes on them, especially as they get older and if they are outside or something. If we just keep our eyes out, even things like not driving quick, too fast through a neighborhood and things like that. So I really appreciate that you came on and shared this with us today, and I shared your heart, and I'm so blessed by you. So I'm so excited to have you on. I do need to give a quick disclaimer for our viewers. Please be sure to check your local laws and regulations governing foster care in your area. We're simply sharing from personal stories and experience and not speaking on behalf of a private or public agency. So that is all the time that we have for today. Special thanks to Susan. We're so thankful that you came on. We need an applause button.
Those little clapper hands.
Right. Makes me think of, I watched Karate Kid 2 the other day, and the drum, and it was filmed on Hawaii, so it makes me think of that drum. Anyway,
Yeah.
that was actually, I think that was New Year's Day that I watched that.
There you go. So, did you enjoy the helpful tips and ideas we shared on this Table Talk chat? We would love for you to like and share this video with your friends. And I'm just going to add in there that hopefully, if you've been thinking about this, that Susan's given you some really great insight and she shared her heart, and maybe that will make the difference for you to make that decision too.
All right, and be sure to join us on our next AWN Table Talk Live on Friday, January 25th at 2:30 Eastern, 1:30 Central Time.
In the meantime, be sure to check out our experience and expert blogs on our website at armywifenetwork.com. We've got bloggers from all walks of military life sharing their journey with you. Lots of great information and insights, so be sure to check it out.
With so many ways to be informed and stay connected, we really are your interactive empowerment for Army wives by Army wives. Thanks for watching.